What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big news involving Tesla moving forward, what's happening with the economic calendar, what you should be watching for on the trends for the share price. But let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. You deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, and this offer ends in just about 2 weeks from now. Anyways, now I just want to talk about something very important. Looking at Tesla, we have a bit of a downtrend that's kind of being respected right here. Tesla obviously had this high in this 270 area, got this big sell-off because of the robotaxi being delayed news that came out from Bloomberg. And since then, we saw this nice little pushback up to about this 265 area yesterday, and then it started to downtrend. Since then, we're actually down over 15 points since then. Tesla's starting to slow down quite a bit. So I want to be very, very careful with Tesla. I'm going to talk more about this. We are starting to see a little bit of weakness developing on the chart. We're not crashing or anything like that. This is actually completely normal. I've just seen such a big rally because if I go back, right, if we go back on the chart like this, you guys can see it was pumping like crazy last week. Since July started, it was just on fire, going from the 170s all the way up to the 270s. And since then, there's a bit of a downtrend that's starting. It's very, very common for it to kind of get a little pullback, slow down a bit after such a big run. So it's nothing to worry about, but I'm still very confident that Tesla will run a lot more later on. So I will talk more about this in just a few minutes. I just want to talk about this real quick. As a reminder, we have Kugler giving a speech today from the Fed, and nothing else that's too significant. There's nothing too significant, coming out for the rest of the day as well going into tomorrow. I'm not seeing anything too crazy, just a couple of Fed speeches. Then we have the Fed Beige Book, and there's nothing, too crazy that's going on, at least in terms of economic data and news. So the market's kind of entering a more consolidation phase. But for Tesla, we're seeing some important headlines coming out. Tesla's now looking to fill its ranks after Elon Musk and the Tesla team have laid off thousands of workers. They laid off nearly 20,000 workers earlier this year, which is not the best of news. In some ways, it is good because it actually helped Tesla kind of reduce a lot of expenditures during times in which their sales were at a decline. But at the same time, it was bad news because a lot of great employees had to leave the company, which did lead to a lot of changes. This also could have led to a lot of great employees leaving. So that's the reason why Tesla is now in a position where they're starting to rehire a lot of them and actually hire more. So we're actually seeing Tesla hiring more than 800 workers in the US to fill positions in pretty much every position, from construction to manufacturing, AI, and robotics, and many, many other things like that. And this is like 3 months since it, initiated the mass layoffs. That's actually very, very important, at least for Tesla. So let's hope that they find great employees, great people to kind of fill in those roles. And that's actually good news for them, in my personal opinion. On top of this, we're seeing a lot of headlines coming out about how Tesla's not only looking at more job openings, but simultaneously the share price is making new developments. That's the biggest thing that's coming out. There's been a lot of talk about their energy storage, which is a very, very critical area for growth. So that's taking a lot of positions right now in like Palo Alto, California. And we're starting to see a lot of talk about their Megapack products being developed as well. So we're starting to see a lot more engineers being hired, at least for that sector, Tesla's energy storage. And I think that's actually very, very important. So with that being said, what do I see for the share price? In my personal opinion, guys, I'm going to be looking at this range right here. So I'm going to draw like a trend line right here. Kind of draw it out just like this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this easily. But this is like going to be our resistance. This blue line you see, that's going to be our resistance for Tesla. And then our support is going to be this trend from right about here. We can actually draw it out from just about here and kind of connect these. So you guys could see how this has been moving, at least as of recently, how Tesla's been just continuing to flow in this trend. We're actually seeing some weakness that's kind of like developing. So we are starting to flag right here, and there is a risk of it kind of continuing to downtrend in this range for an extended period of time. So, like I said in my earlier video, right, we love to pop and drop. That's like the most basic way I could have described this. If you look at the last couple of days of last week, it popped and dropped consistently on many, many days. So today we got a little pop back up towards 258, which is pretty much just these market makers kind of grabbing liquidity, and we're starting to see like Wall Street kind of triggering stops up here. This is where they kind of like triggered stops from this previous resistance from our levels yesterday and also parts of today during the pre-market. So they broke that only to reject it. That was once again their little test phase. And then this led to this little sell-off all the way down to where our trend line happens to be for it to kind of continue to trend just like this. So in my personal opinion, I think that there is a risk of this potentially continuing to downtrend because for the last 1.5 days, we had this high here, we made this new low, made a lower high, lower low, so we're starting to downtrend. Tesla needs to break past 260 to turn back to bullish. As long as we're below it, there is a risk of us just continuing to downtrend from here. So I think Tesla could downtrend a little bit lower. It may just continue to shuffle in this range for the rest of today, but later on there is still some risk of a little bit more downside. I want to give you guys a warning about that, but this is nothing to be scared about, nothing to worry about. This is completely normal after how much we pumped since July started. Remember, Tesla pumped more than 100 points, going from the 170s all the way up to the 270s. So it's completely fine, completely normal to see a move like this. It's not even a surprise whatsoever. So we'll just have to see how things progress from here. On top of this, when it comes to SPY, we're very range bound. There is technically a possible head and shoulders like structure, but like I said before, it's just range bound price action. As you can see, we're just consolidating between 564 to 565 as resistance, and our key supports at 560. So it's still range bound, but it is struggling to break past 565. That's a very, very tough resistance. And even though we had this bullish wedge that was developing, there's no sign that SPY is actually trying to like break out just yet. We have to break past 565 to turn bullish. If we end up rejecting, which I'm not really seeing true signals of us getting a big rejection yet. We're still holding the blue trend line very, very nicely. We have to lose 560. If we lose 560, we will turn more bearish. Otherwise, we're just kind of shuffling. We're actually trading sideways right now. We're still in a consolidation phase. So I think SPY is going to continue to consolidate. There could be some downside coming later, but there's no confirmation yet. Need to see if the trend line breaks. Nvidia came down exactly as you predicted. We called out some downside on this move right here. The first thing would be this confluence of bearish indicators. We have a head and shoulders like structure that was developing. We have this downtrend we were talking about, and also the fact that that has led to this like symmetrical structure, which led us to our price target of 126. So I think we're going to continue to consolidate here, but there is a risk of some downside coming to the 125 or below area. So watch for that very carefully. Bitcoin is also in an interesting place right now. It's actually trying to rebound a bit, but be careful because if we establish a lower high, we could continue to reject and come back down. I'll be watching 64,800 as resistance. That's where our imbalance happens to be. And we'll see if we get a rejection or not. So just be a little bit careful with Bitcoin. We're approaching some tough resistance, so we'll see what kind of reaction we get. Might push a little bit more, but then we'll see how it goes from there. The QQQ got a big hit right over here. We actually pumped back up just under 499. That's the level I was talking about before we see the rug pull, and that's what ended up happening. I talked about a pump and dump, and this kind of resembles a head and shoulders, so there is a risk of a little bit more downside, in my opinion. If we fail to hold 494, that's where our support happens to be, there's going to be even more downside essentially coming. So we had this 494 support I called out. We'll be dipping all the way down to 492 if that fails. There is a risk of downside, so just be very careful with the chart. On Aapl, I called out 232 in my early morning video. We came very close to that. I'm seeing some weakness developing on Aapl as well. It might dip lower if we fail to hold 234 or 233.8. So I think there's a risk of us dipping all the way down to the 232s. So I'll be watching for that very carefully. That's looking more probable in my opinion. Supermicro came down to 880, which is what we called out yesterday if we lost 900. And we're going to be watching it shuffle between 867 and 900. I think that's where our range happens to be. If we lose 867, we're going to be dipping lower. And I do see a risk of that, but that depends on how we end up getting this reaction. As we were talking about, the IWM remains bullish. The Russell is still breaking out above 220. Our next target is 224. It's continuing to remain very, very bullish. Coinbase pushed a little bit. I could see it push a little bit more to fill this gap. So look for 245, but then we could reject and come back down to test the trend line. So as of right now, we're holding some key support. We're doing a good job. There could be a little bit more upside, but watch and see what kind of reaction we get. For Amazon, we're kind of rejecting off our 200 EMA. We tried to break out only to reject. So I'm going to be looking for a drop back down towards 192.5. It kind of popped and may drop a little bit lower, so watch for that. For Meta's kind of rejecting right here off its 20 EMA. I see a risk of us dipping all the way down towards 485. So watch 488 and 485 as key supports. Watch resistance around 496. I see a risk of downside nonetheless. For Microsoft, we could also be dipping a little bit lower. We have this 450 area as resistance. We have key support all the way down here around 447. So I see some risks of downside. We're kind of rejecting right here. We could retest 450, then reject and continue to dip, but I'm seeing a weakness developing on Microsoft nonetheless. Google tried to break out. We called out 190. We did touch it only to reject. So it did come up a little bit only to reject. Watch support at 187.4. If we lose that, there's going to be a bigger drop. It's currently testing the 200 EMA. I do see a risk of this dipping all the way down to the 186 area if we lose 187.4. So just be careful. There is weakness once again developing in the markets. So a lot of tech stocks are starting to slow down. And I'm thinking that what's happening is there's going to be a big rotation. A lot of money is kind of leaving tech and it's actually going into small caps in the IWM. That's why the Russell is pumping like crazy, whereas the overall market's a little bit lackluster, kind of range bound. We're starting to see tech slowing down a bit. That's what's happening right now. There's a little rotation that's going on. So we'll see how things progress from here. But with that being said, make sure you watch some key levels on Tesla. Like I said earlier, there's actually a bit of a downtrend that's starting to be respected right now. So just be careful with the way it's moving. That does not mean Tesla's crashing. It's just a temporary move. Unless we break past 260, this is going to likely continue. So as of right now, we're downtrending. So we'll just have to see how things go for Tesla. We might push a little bit higher, pop a little bit higher before it continues lower. Watch for that very carefully, and we'll be very, very patient nonetheless. All right. So make sure you watch these levels. Once again, I'm watching 252.8 is resistance, and then this blue trend line, and we have support at 250. So we'll just have to see how it goes. So watch the levels, do what you have to do, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon in just a couple of hours. Have a great day, and peace out.